Well, happy Monday. It's November 27th. Want to share with you the latest data here in the Austin metro area. I'm going to share with you some local stats. We'll look at mortgage rates, and also I'll share a little bit of national news as well. We're starting with this chart here. This is the sales to list price ratio. In other words, when you list the house, where does it ultimately sell? Right now, this is 100%, kind of this second bar here. This is the pandemic when everything was selling above full list price, at least in the peak spring months. But since then, we've kind of inverted, and you can see everything is selling on average below list price as a market. We kind of bottomed out at the end of last year when we got below 98%. We were about 97%. And now we are kind of sitting around 98%. So that's typically a sluggish market. It doesn't sound that bad. But this is to the last list price, not the original list price, but whatever your last list price was, we're still selling below that price. So that's the sales to list price ratio. This is going to be looking at original price versus sold price. We've been watching this one for a while. So original price is what I just talked about. This is what you first listed the property for. And then ultimately the blue is what are the properties selling for. This is not an individual house, but just the market as a whole. And if we follow the green, we're asking the most back in March around 532. The market softened. We're sitting around 480 right now in terms of the original asking price. But we're selling, and you can see if we go back to the peak of the year in June, about 475, we're down about 50 grand. We're at 425 right now. That does not mean that houses individually have lost 50 grand, but it does mean on average buyers are buying. They're kind of a flight to cheaper right now, a flight to affordability. And of course, we are seeing some discounting in the market. And so we're seeing that price soften. I expect next spring, I think that bell curve will round back up. And I think we'll see it kind of start to climb again in the spring. That's traditionally what happens. But for now, we're at our lowest median closed price of the year. If I go back to February, we were at 429.9, and now we're at 425. So officially in this year, we are now negative for the first time. And so interesting to see that. I kind of predicted we'd be there. We're not that far negative. We're pretty flat. But if we have one more month of decline, we'll end the year in a negative for the year in terms of appreciation. This is looking at number of active versus sold listings. I've been waiting for this bell curve to kind of curve down. I think we're finally starting to see that. So this is the number of active listings. Typically, we peak out a little earlier than we have the last 2 years, but there's been so few sales. You can see that in the blue numbers. This is number of sales that it's allowed listings just to kind of stay more inventory on the market longer. So we really peaked out in September. We barely dropped any in October. We're finally starting to see it come down, although we're still over 10,000, almost 10,500 single family homes in the metro, much higher than we saw back in February where we were sitting at 8,700. So we still need to drop about 2,000 homes before we get back down. And we might by the time we get to February. We'll have to see. But we're finally starting to see that bell curve kind of round off a little bit. I do not expect we're going to see many more sellers listing their homes in the next 30 to 45 days. I think once we get back into early January of 2024, that's when I do expect we'll start to see listings start to come back up. Maybe it takes till February like it did on this chart, but ultimately the spring is when sellers want to bring their houses to the market. I can also tell you there are a number of sellers that are probably going to pull their houses off the market right now. Wait 90 days, which is typically how long it takes to reset in the MLS back to zero. And then they'll list in, March or April in kind of the peak of the spring to see if they can have a better result. So I do expect at least some subset of sellers are going to be making that move. This is an interesting chart. This is cumulative days on market. It's just a visual. Don't worry about the number of days. But pre-pandemic is over here. And typically the winter months is when you see the days on market climb. And then the spring months is when you see them fall because you have more sales. They sell faster. And then they climb again. So this was this was February 2020. And then it just never came back up. It tried to come back up and it couldn't. We ran out of inventory. You can really see how it bottomed out during the pandemic. Everything sold. Here's 10 days was our cumulative days on market, under 10 days for almost 2 years. And then all of a sudden they rose interest rates and bam, we were at our highest point in at least 5 years. And now we're kind of returning to that cycle, and we're a little higher peaks than we saw pre-pandemic. So it just total role reversal. We went from super low days on market to now we're seeing above average days on market over the last decade. All right, interest rates. Where are we sitting today? So this is a look at the 30-year fixed. This is again Monday morning. This number will change midday, but we're sitting under 7.5. We're about 7.3%. If you have a few products, you might get a 6 on it, a higher 6 number. And of course, if you have great credit, that helps too. But we've seen this come down. If I scroll down and show you this chart down here, this is average 30-year fixed rates. If I go all the way back, this was April. We bottomed out this year around 6.1%, which was great. It was actually coming down that first quarter. We got to April, and it looked like maybe we were going to have a good, downturn in mortgage rates. And then look what happened for the next, 8 months. We just kind of started climbing. We climbed and we broke 7 in May. We kind of hovered around 7, and then we just started going up, up, up. We got to 7.5. By the time we got to mid-October, we hit 8%. And we thought, oh my gosh, it's going to keep going. And so ultimately, there was some news, some catalysts that kind of made it seem like maybe we've peaked on inflation or peaked on rates. Since that October point, October 18th, we've now seen them come down, we'll say, 70 basis points. So that's good news for consumers. I mean, it's still 7.3%. But we're starting to see at least a full month now, over a month, where we've seen the rates come down from that 8 high. And we'll have to see where things settle out at the end of the year to kick off 2024. But for now, I think we're seeing at least a little bit of a positive trend in mortgage rates. All right, I'm going to wrap it up with a little story that came out of Redfin, some of their news. Buyers have backed out of deals at the highest rate on record. So even though we're seeing more pending sales because there's more inventory growing nationally, in October, closed sales fell about 1.8% from a month earlier and 12.5% from a year earlier, hitting their lowest level since the onset of the pandemic. And that's partly because the deals are falling through at the last minute. So buyers are a little more skittish. Interest rates are higher. Buyers are more nervous. Sellers are too. But I think we're seeing that, largely because of the higher interest rates. And if you look at this chart down here, it kind of shows it to you visually. Here's 2023, all right? And it's went from 13% of deals up to about 17%, kind of falling through. That kind of, in my opinion, mirrors a lot of the mortgage rates that we've seen. When mortgage rates were low in the pandemic, we were below 12%. We had peaks back in certain windows. That hit 17% back in March of 2020, which was when the very beginning of COVID. That's when a lot of people pulled out. I think right now people are just nervous about mortgage rates for a number of reasons. They're nervous when it goes up, and they're nervous when it comes down because they don't want to feel like they locked in at the peak. So we're kind of seeing it work both ways. I'm having conversations on both sides of that coin. But anyways, if you are planning to buy or sell in the next, let's say, 45 days, we're heading into the holidays. We just finished Thanksgiving. We're about 4 weeks out from Christmas, 5 weeks from New Year's. So a lot of people are going to be doing Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all the stuff, getting busy with holidays. So we're going to see activity on listings slow down. It happens every year. It's kind of a seasonal period. So if you are a seller right now, you need to prepare for that and expect that it's going to be slower. You may want to have your own Cyber Monday sale in terms of your list price and think about what you can do to be competitive in the market. And I can share with you some ideas there. If you are a buyer, you have seen in my chart that we are going to start to see inventories drop. So you may or may not see as many homes as you did maybe a few months ago. But at the same time, you have less buyer activity and competition. And hopefully you're starting to see some tailwinds on the mortgage rates and bringing those down for you. So it is a great opportunity to get out there if you're a buyer because you're really not going to have a lot of competition. I do expect, because it happens every year, we're going to see that competition pick up starting in mid-January and build up from there through the spring. So if you want to follow all of these videos, please check out our YouTube channel at Ryan Kelly Group on YouTube. We post these every single Monday. In the meantime, I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I had an amazing week off. I'm energized, ready to kick it in for the next 4 weeks before we get to Christmas, and look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks.